You know what's funny? We used to have religions that promised salvation. Now we have corporations that promise mindfulness. Once upon a time, the priest told you to endure suffering quietly. Now your manager does it with a motivational quote and a smiley face mug. Stay positive, they say. Be grateful, as if gratitude were a moral obligation, not a feeling. The modern world has turned positivity into propaganda obedience disguised as enlightenment. We're not asked to think or to challenge. We're asked to smile through it. The trick is simple. Control the tone, and you control the truth. Anger, unproductive. Sadness, unhealthy. Doubt, toxic. So we filter it all out until only one emotion remains: pleasantness. The ideology of smooth surfaces, no rough edges, no hard questions, just a performance of serenity. Every office wall, every Instagram caption repeats the mantra, good vibes only. That's not philosophy, that's sedation. You can't build a just world on a diet of affirmations. I've seen students come into my classes terrified to sound negative. They've been trained to equate critique with cruelty. To disagree is to offend. To be angry is to fail some invisible moral test. And I tell them anger is a sign of life. If you can't get angry in a world this absurd, you're not enlightened, you're numb. The system loves numb people. They're reliable. They clock in, they meet deadlines, they smile at meetings, they manifest abundance. You could call it a spiritual lobotomy. The perfect worker now isn't the strongest or the smartest, it's the calmest. The one who can watch everything burn and still say it's all part of the journey. And we buy it, don't we? We call cynicism negativity, realism, pessimism. We've been so conditioned to avoid discomfort that truth itself feels rude. That's the genius of this new obedience. It sells peace as progress. It's easy to control people who confuse apathy for wisdom. You don't need secret police when everyone's too zen to care. You just give them a yoga mat, a playlist, a productivity app that tracks their mood. The revolution isn't televised because everyone's meditating through it. I'm not saying positivity is evil. I'm saying it's been weaponized. It's become a moral shield for complacency. When a society tells you to stay grateful while exploiting you, that's not advice. It's gaslighting. Gratitude becomes the price of survival. And if you ever dare to question it, they'll call you negative, ungrateful, or my personal favorite, not a team player. That's how control works now, through emotional branding. They don't break your spirit, they sell it back to you with a smile. You want to know what real positivity looks like? It's not smiling while you're being crushed, it's refusing to call the crushing normal. It's the stubborn belief that things could be different, even if that belief makes you unbearable to others. It's hope with teeth. So yeah, keep your crystals, your vision boards, your gratitude journals, but don't confuse sedation with serenity. Don't let them turn your peace into passivity. Because if the world can convince you to stay quiet while it feeds on you, then it doesn't need to chain you. You'll keep yourself still. You'll call it balance, you'll call it growth, but deep down you'll know it's sleep. And the system loves you best when you're dreaming. You ever notice how we stopped asking people who they are and started asking what they do? As if the answer to your existence could fit neatly on a LinkedIn bio. Once, morality was about the soul, sin, virtue, redemption. Now it's about the schedule. The new moral code isn't written in commandments. It's written in metrics. Be productive. Stay busy. Don't waste time. And God help you if you stop for a moment, because the second you rest, you feel the guilt creep in, whispering that you should be doing more. We used to confess our sins to priests. Now we confess our idleness to calendars. Productivity has become the new religion. It even has its saints, the CEOs who sleep 4 hours a night, the influencers who rise and grind, the gurus who tell you success is just one more morning routine away. These people don't sell wisdom, they sell endurance. And we worship them because deep down we've been trained to equate exhaustion with worth. The sleepless worker, the burned out student, the parent juggling 3 jobs, we don't see them as victims of a broken system. We call them heroes. We glorify the grind because it keeps the machine running. And the machine is clever. It knows you won't question it if you're too busy proving yourself to it. That's why it rewards fatigue with prestige. It gives you titles, promotions, opportunities, all the little gold stars that make slavery feel like progress. The trick isn't to chain your body, it's to colonize your time, to make you believe that every second of your life must serve a purpose that someone else defines. You can't rebel when your rebellion looks like hustle. You can't think when your brain's a to-do list. I've met people who say, "I love my work," and I believe them. That's the saddest part. They've built their entire identity around labor. Take away their job, and they wouldn't know who they are. Capitalism didn't just buy their time, it bought their sense of self. You see, once work becomes the only way to feel valuable, the system doesn't need to control you. You'll do it yourself. You'll measure your worth in emails, steps, sales, followers. You'll call it self-discipline, but it's really self-surveillance. I'm not saying work is evil. What's evil is the idea that life must constantly justify itself through productivity. That rest is a flaw. That pleasure is guilt. We're so terrified of wasting time that we've forgotten how to live inside it. We don't rest, we recharge. Even leisure has been rebranded as preparation for more work. You don't take a walk, you optimize your creativity. You don't read a book, you build your personal growth. You don't breathe, you biohack. Every act of being has been turned into a means to an end. And somewhere in that madness we lost the point. We're sprinting towards success without ever asking where the finish line is or who drew it. Productivity has made us efficient, yes. Efficient at missing our own lives. Maybe freedom isn't about doing more. Maybe it's about doing less and meaning it. Maybe it's the courage to be unproductive, to sit, to think, to stare out a window without a goal. The system will call you lazy, a failure, a dreamer. Let it. Because the truth is, the more you rest, the more dangerous you become. A rested mind starts asking questions, and nothing terrifies a system built on exhaustion more than a human being who's finally awake enough to see it. You ever notice how even our escapes feel managed? Controlled fun, scheduled rest, pre-approved relaxation? You get a weekend to recharge like a battery plugged into the wall, not a person trying to live. We've built a world where even leisure has a purpose, to get you back to work on Monday. You're not resting, you're refueling, and they call that balance. Take Netflix, for example, the great digital lullaby. You think you're unwinding, but you're being sedated one click at a time. Endless choice, zero resistance. You scroll through hundreds of titles not to find something meaningful, but to avoid silence. Because silence, God forbid, might make you think. The system doesn't mind if you escape, it depends on it. A society that runs on stress needs people who know how to numb themselves, just enough to keep going. It's not rebellion, it's recovery management. And they've made it so seductive. Your entertainment, your self-care, your mindfulness apps, they all promise salvation in small doses. Take a break, breathe deeply, you deserve this. Every slogan is a tiny sedative wrapped in self-love. But what they're really saying is, stay calm, stay manageable, real rest, the kind where you actually question the life you're returning to, is dangerous. That kind of rest leads to revolution. But the system's smarter than that. It gives you comfort that feels like freedom, pleasure that feels like peace, and distraction that feels like relief. It's funny, even meditation, which once meant radical stillness, has become productivity's handmaid. You don't meditate to know yourself anymore. You do it to optimize focus. Mindfulness isn't rebellion now, it's corporate policy. You can sit quietly as long as it makes you better at your job. The irony is delicious ancient spiritual tools, once meant to dismantle ego, now sold as accessories for efficiency. We're not awakening, we're rebranding burnout as enlightenment. And yet, look closer, this isn't a conspiracy of a few evil masterminds. It's a system that evolved naturally, because it works. You don't need guards or guns when pleasure is the perfect prison. The philosopher Aldous Huxley saw it coming. He said the future wouldn't be controlled by pain, but by pleasure. And here we are, scrolling through curated dreams, calling it choice. The cage got soft, and we mistook that softness for freedom. But I'm not preaching despair. There's nothing wrong with watching a movie or taking a walk. Hell, I love a good drink and a bad film. The problem starts when every act of rest becomes a transaction, when you can't sit in silence without reaching for a screen, when pleasure replaces presence. The truth is, they don't fear your exhaustion, they built it. What they fear is your clarity. A mind that stops running might start seeing. A person who rests long enough might remember they're human, not hardware. So if you really want to escape, don't escape into comfort. Escape into awareness. Sit there quietly, without purpose, without content, without the urge to perform wellness. Let the boredom sting a little. It's a sign you're waking up. Because the moment you stop being entertained, you start being alive again. And that, my friend, is the one escape the system can't monetize. You want to know what real rebellion looks like today? Try saying, I'm not okay. Just that. Not a manifesto, not a protest sign, just honesty. Watch how fast the smiles tighten. Watch the air in the room change. Because nothing makes this culture more uncomfortable than truth spoken without a filter. You can talk about growth, healing, gratitude, all the shiny words, but the moment you say something raw, something human, the system pulls out its labels. Negative, toxic, unproductive. You're not censored anymore, you're diagnosed. That's how they do it now. The punishment for noise isn't prison, it's exile through politeness. It's brilliant, really. The old systems of control used force. The new one uses manners. You don't need a dictator when everyone's trained to self-police through positivity. You learn to shrink your anger, to edit your emotions, to sound balanced no matter what's happening. A company can exploit you, a government can lie to you, and your friends will still say, just focus on the good energy. That's not spirituality, that's sedation. The goal isn't peace, it's compliance disguised as calm. The philosopher Michel Foucault wrote about how modern power doesn't repress, it normalizes. It doesn't silence you by gagging your mouth. It simply defines what's acceptable to say. And now acceptable means agreeable, it means inoffensive, digestible, marketable. The world will let you speak as long as you don't disturb the peace. But what if the peace itself is built on lies? What if the peace is just the quiet hum of collective denial? Then silence isn't virtue, it's complicity. You see, anger used to mean something. It was fuel, it was clarity, it was the moment you realized you still had a pulse. But now, anger is a PR problem. Corporations teach emotional intelligence, which often just means never showing emotions that might threaten profit. Schools tell kids to be kind, which often means to be quiet. Every system has learned to translate passion into pathology. You don't need to suppress rebellion if you can convince rebels that they're mentally unhealthy. You're just burned out. You're projecting. You need self-care. No, maybe you're awake, but it's hard to stay loud in a bear. World that rewards silence. Speaking the truth makes you sound abrasive. Saying this is wrong makes you sound dramatic. The culture trains you to dilute every statement until it's safe enough to sell. And that's how rebellion dies, not in battle, but in branding. Still, I get it. It's exhausting being the one who keeps shouting in a room full of people who call it noise. It's lonely to care when apathy feels like the social norm. But here's the thing. Truth was never meant to be popular. The world doesn't change because polite people keep calm. It changes because someone finally breaks the silence. So go ahead, be negative, be difficult. Refuse to make your rage digestible. Because if the price of being honest is being called toxic, then wear the label proudly. It means you still feel something real. And in a culture this numb, that's the most radical thing you can be alive. You ever wake up one morning and realize the dream wasn't random? It was scripted? The ads, the aspirations, the smiles, all rehearsed. You've been sleepwalking through a world that keeps whispering, relax, everything's fine, while quietly draining your life through the walls. And when you finally see it, really see it, the first thing you feel isn't pride, it's nausea. Because waking up isn't a victory, it's vertigo. You start to notice how deep the hypnosis goes into your job, your relationships, even your idea of happiness. You see how often you've mistaken comfort for peace, busyness for purpose, noise for meaning, and it hurts. But that pain, that's consciousness trying to breathe. People talk about freedom like it's fireworks, loud, heroic, cinematic. But in a world built to keep you sedated, freedom is much quieter. It's the moment you stop nodding along. It's when you turn off the motivational noise, sit in the stillness, and realize you don't actually believe half the things you say. Freedom today isn't about breaking chains. It's about noticing the ones you volunteered to wear. The system doesn't care if you scream as long as you keep scrolling. It doesn't need your loyalty. It needs your attention. And every click, every view, every like is another hour of sleep it buys for itself. You see, the beauty of this new form of control is that it feels voluntary. Nobody's forcing you to dream. You chose the dream. You built it yourself out of hashtags, career goals, and self-care routines. You turned your cage into a mood board. That's why waking up is so disorienting, because it feels like betrayal. Betrayal of the life you worked so hard to normalize. But once you see how much of your identity was manufactured for you, you can't go back to pretending it's all fine. You can fake sleep for a while, sure, but you'll never really rest again. And that's the cost of awareness. You lose the easy comfort of ignorance. You stop laughing at the jokes everyone else finds funny. You start noticing the absurdity in things you used to admire. You feel alienated, out of sync, even broken. But here's the secret. That feeling of not fitting in isn't failure. It's freedom stretching its limbs. The discomfort is proof that you've stopped being manageable. The world rewards obedience with calm. It punishes consciousness with chaos. So if you're anxious, restless, angry, good, it means you're not hypnotized anymore. Waking up doesn't make you a hero. It makes you human. You won't overthrow the system overnight, but you'll stop feeding it blindly. You'll start living with your eyes open, which is rarer than any revolution. You'll still work, still laugh, still love, but you'll do it awake, which means you'll do it honestly. So no, freedom today isn't loud, it doesn't shout, it whispers. It lives in the small, private decision to stay conscious when everything around you begs for your sleep. And maybe that's enough. Because the world doesn't need more dreamers right now, it needs a few people willing to open their eyes, even if the light hurts. And once you do, even if you stumble, even if you ache, that light will be the first real thing you've seen in years.